How's it going, everybody? Caliber Whips here, and today this video is probably one of my most anticipated tutorials yet, and that is how to actually implement an English eye fall hitch. Now, I have a video titled The Basics on English Eye Fall Hitches. If you guys haven't seen that video yet, go check it out. The link for that is in the description down below, so I'm not going to talk too much about English eyes, but a few things I do want to mention. Number one is that in that video I said I prefer 4-point fall hitches over English eyes. Now, that opinion has completely changed. I prefer English eyes over 4-point fall hitches now. And the reason why is because not only is actual fall replacement a breeze, but actually making a whip with an English eye fall hitch is actually easier to do than making a whip with a 4-point fall hitch. And the reason why I say that is because, first of all, when you do a whip normally, you start at the handle, you have like 16 strands, or 8 depending on how you cut them. You have a 16 plait whip, and then you plait the whip, and then you drop strands as you go, and then you end at the 4-point fall hitch. With an English eye, you only need one strand, in the sense that you only need one strand length. You don't need to write down all the strand lengths, you need one. And what you do is you add the English eye to the tip of your whip, and then you plait, and then you add strands as you go, and you only need one because you measure it along with what you have left. And I'll explain what that is later on in the video. But I actually really love English eyes. As a matter of fact, all of my whip orders recently have been English eye fall hitch whips. So enough chit chat, let's get started and make a whip with an English eye fall hitch. So we have 2 strands, they're both 21 feet, and that's the only strand length you need to know. We're actually building a chainsawable whip, and the hemostat marks the exact middle of both of these strands. Now, the English eye fall hitch that I like to make is where I take the lacing needle and I just sheath one piece of paracord in on the other one. And you'll have to excuse my whipmaker's thumbnail here. But anyways, the English eye fall hitch is going to be black instead of this light tan. So what we're going to do, this is roughly the exact middle. So it's going to be about 2 inches. So that's the exact middle right there. So what we're going to do now, see if I can do this on camera. There we go, and it's about 2 inches. That's what you want. If it's any bigger, it's going to look very large and chunky. So we're going to pull this really fast so it doesn't snag, just like that. And what we're going to do is just keep on pulling this until we reach the center of this. Pretty much until this center goes in here. So once you get the strands even in the middle with each other, what you're going to want to do is take your paracord and just scrunch it up really tight. Because what happens is you have it all loose like this, you're going to want to take it and you're going to scrunch it up really tight, just like that. And you want a nice small English eye fall hitch. So now what you're going to want to do is to take it and put it in your vise. Just like that. And now we can either A, put the core strand in and then plait around it, or B, just plait it normally. So what we're going to do here to get this set up is we're going to cross these 2 black ones over, take this tan one, bring it around the back and go over, and then with this guy go over once again, and that's pretty much it. Just plait normally. It's pronounced plat. I keep saying plate. It drives me crazy. Okay, so make sure you pull everything really tight, and then just I'm going to plait for about 4 inches, and then I'm going to add my core strand. So after we've plaited a couple of inches, we're ready to insert our core strand. Now again, this is my method that I'm doing for this whip. Sometimes the core strand is actually injected at the tip of the English eye, and then kind of singed and melted at the tip. You would spread the English eye apart, kind of melt the core, and then kind of press it in. But in this case, we're going to inject it, and the way that we're going to do that is literally just kind of loosening this up Just kind of sticking it through the plait. So if I can get my butterfingers, there we go. So if we can get it not to slip, what we would do is literally just do our best to plait with it on. Get all these strands out of the way. Okay. Alright, so we're just going to pull everything very tightly. Just plate. So I would say, about up to there. You may be noticing this little guy sticking out. So what we're going to do is take our whip, take our core, and gently pull it so it barely sneaks under. Okay. Hopefully I didn't mess it up too much. I've had it where I pull it and it pulls out and you have to redo it. But basically what I just did now is I slipped it under and it is now completely undetectable. And then you want to pull everything super tight and get it normal again. Because you have to worry about loose strands. Because up here was where that core strand was, and since you pulled it in, you might have unleashed some slack. And you do not want to do that. So we're going to keep on plating until it's time to actually add our first strand. Okay, adding strands. Now I usually add strands 2 at a time, but when I'm usually going from 4 to 6 plait, I usually add them 1 at a time. And this is where the tricky part is. Now the question is, how long do you make the strand? Because I told you guys you only need 1 strand length, and that's the 2 strand lengths for these guys. That's it. Okay, well, how do you know how long to cut the next one? Well, I'm glad you asked, because what I have here is a piece of paracord, and since you add it 1 at a time, you measure it as long as half of one of these strands. So for example, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, I'm going to hold it to this, and I'm going to measure it with these 2 strands right here. It's actually really simple. And you just keep on following it, and oh, would you look at that? It's pretty much exactly the same length. So there we go. So every time you guys add a strand, you just take one of your strands right here and you just line it up with the strand that you're going to cut. And it's that simple. That's all you need to do. That's what I've done all the time, and it works really well. So I'm trying to make up stuff as I go along, as I'm trying to gut this piece of paracord. It's still pretty long because I cut a 20-foot strand, so I'd say this thing is about 10 feet. There we go, I threw it in the trash. Okay, so this is my method that I'll do. I'll take my snippers here and I'll cut it. Then I'll singe it. Then I'll take my glue, if I can find it. There it is. Right there. Right on the ground. I just dropped it. There we go. Okay. I'm sitting in another squeaky chair. Okay, so I'm going to take some glue, put a little bit on, just like that. Okay. Put this down. I'm pretty much out of it, so I have to put it down in that fashion. Okay, enough rambling. So you guys ready for the super skilled move? There we go. Boom. Super skillful, right? Look at that. Look at that expertise. Okay, so for extra good measure, I'm going to take a piece of nylon thread. I'll usually cut like anywhere from a 12 to 20 inch section. Doesn't matter. I'm going to take it. It's waxed. I actually wax it, which makes it very, very flammable. I burn it and then try to press it up against this. And now, what I'm going to do is tie this around. So for every dropped strand on an English eye fall hitch, 9 times out of 10, I usually tie this piece of string around it. There's that squeaky chair again. That's what you guys are hearing. Just thought I'd let you guys know. Okay. So I'm going to take my string and just wrap it around just like that. Because I've had it where when this gets injected into the actual plaiting, I've had it where I pull on it thinking it's a strand, but it's not, and the glue breaks loose. And I'm like, okay, great, now I have to just undo that whole section. And yeah, so this string adds just for extra protection. And again, you have to be very good at adding strands, otherwise it'll actually shine through, depending on the color. Okay, there we go. Now this right here is really easy to do. Just plate over it. Now you may be wondering, okay, how do you actually add it to your plaiting? Well, I'll show you once I quickly get to that point. So I'm pretty much over the point now, so as you guys can tell, what I usually do is I'll take it and I'll slide it right over to the side, just like that. That's pretty much it. Now, be sure to plate just a little bit over. You might be able to see the string shining through. Not to worry, usually. Yep, there we go. A couple of tight pulls, because everything is really loose right now. And there we go. And rolling it also helps it out significantly. So if you guys don't roll whips, you have to. Okay, so yeah, this is where I would go astray without tying that piece of string. I would think that this black strand is that right there, but it's not. It's actually the glued strand, and what I would do is I would crank down on it and it would just boop, pop loose. So I'm just going to just gently tug it and then plait normally. You may be noticing that I'm actually going under 1/2. When you're plaiting, most of the time you go under 2/1, but I'll get to that in a second. Okay, so I think it's about time to add another strand, because we've entered ball chain, and usually when I enter ball chain in a whip, I go to 6 plat. So I'm pretty much going to do the exact same thing with this right here. Let me see if I can find my black paracord that I left on the ground somewhere. Here it is. Okay, found it. Okay, so the pattern that we're going to be doing is this pattern right here. That's when you add 2 strands, in the sense that I'm doing when you add the strands, they're both the same color. When you have 2 mismatched colors, like you have a black one and then a tan one, if you add them both at the same time, you have this oddball strand, as you can see here. So the pattern that we're going to be doing is this pattern right here. So that's what happens when you add 2 strands of the same color. Just thought I'd let you guys know. And you can in this video is just to show you guys how to actually implement an English eye. Once you guys get the hang of it, you can pretty much go nuts with it. Okay, so what we're going to do now is take our strands here, take my paracord, and just literally measure out with it. Okay, so that's pretty much where it ends. Alright, there we go. Yeah, this is not my best video I've done. It's actually, it just hit midnight. It's 12:02 right now, so just thought I'd fill you guys in on that useless information. But that's what happens when you've been making whips all day. You lose your mind. Okay, so we are now done with gutting that strand. We're going to do the same thing as we did before. We're going to snip it at a slight angle, melt it so it doesn't fray, then put a bead of super glue on it, just like that. I'm trying to do everything in the frame, but it's very difficult to. Okay, so Oh, good. I hate it when I drop a strand covered in glue and I get it on my fingers. That's super glue. Oh man, it's a nightmare. Okay. Now what I'm going to do here is see if I can insert it actually inside the plaiting right here. Go in there just like that. Now I don't think I'll be able to tie it off with some string, mostly because I should have injected it just a few millimeters before entering the ball chain, but I've already hit it, so it's a little bit too late for that. The string just adds minute reinforcement just so when you pull on it, it doesn't pop free. But if you plait really tightly, I wouldn't worry about it at all, really. And I glued my finger. You can see right there on my finger. Okay, so one thing that I'm going to show you guys, this is a trick that I picked up from, I was going to say I picked it up from Tori Fisher over at Sword Guy Builds. He was pretty much the breaking point of me doing this. I've seen this done before, where when you go to 6-plat, to keep everything super even, instead of going under 2/1, under 2/1, what you would have is when you have 6-plat, when you plait the whip in 6-plat, if for some reason, unless it's a perfect thickness, you'll have it where the top seems really tight, but the back is really loose. And if you guys have been making whips, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So in this case, I'm going to do this number right here, under 1/2, and then on the other side, I'm going to do the exact opposite, just so the tension on both sides is even. So I'm going to keep on doing this. Make sure you plait very tightly. Okay, so you have to make sure these strands are aligned. Okay, perfect. So we have the tan ones on top, just like this. Okay. There we go. And what I'm going to do here is go under 2/1, so it's just on the opposite. And just keep on plaiting. Just like that. And that just makes everything even. The tension is even. And I'll show you what that looks like in a second. So here's the 6-plat I was talking about. If you guys have been making whips for a long time, you guys know that 6-plat, for some reason, looks kind of tight up here, but the back is all, bunched up and kind of loose. And if you notice, if you go the opposite in the sense that you would go under 1/2 and then under 2/1 on this side, it's pretty much opposite from each other. It looks the same on both sides. You guys see that? And the tension is nice and even. And like I said, I got that idea from Tori Fisher. I've seen it done before, but he was the one that pretty much emphasized its importance. Now, the hard part has been done, showing you guys going from 4 to 6-plat. That was relatively difficult. I'm actually going to show you guys me adding 2 strands at a time later on down the whip. So I'm actually not going to go from 6 to 8-plat. I'm probably going to go maybe 10 to 12 or 12 to 14 when I do the next adding strand. I was going to say strand drop, but that's not correct. Anyways, I'm going to continue plaiting, and I'll see you guys then. Alright, so we are ready to add 2 strands at a time to go from 12 to 14 plat. Now let's just pause right here. Some of you guys may be wondering when and where do you actually add the strands on your whip. And for that, you need to acquire what I like to call the whip maker's sense. And that's pretty much obtained through when you build whips over a long period of time, or you've built many whips, you pretty much have that sense of how plaiting works. Like if you're doing an 8-plat, you kind of get that sense of the whip is getting a bit thicker, now it's time to bump it up to 10-plat. Because if you add a strand too early, what's going to happen is all the strands are going to crowd over each other and it's not going to look good. Or if you add a strand too late, what's going to happen is the strands are going to gap, and instead of looking like this, they're going to kind of look like that. And that's what you don't want. So you have to have kind of that sense of when and where to add strands. There really is no definite, add the 10-plat at the 38-inch mark. That doesn't exist. you pretty much have to feel for yourself when and where to add those strands. And that can pretty much be picked up, depending on your learning curve, you can pick it up very quickly or it might take a while. But just thought I'd bring that to your guys' attention. So the method that I like to use for this is I'll take 2 strands, and I've measured it the way that we usually do. And I cut it at a diagonal slant like that. So when you put it together, it forms kind of like an arrow, or kind of like dog ears, but it forms an arrow. And what I'll do is I'll take my lighter here and just barely melt the tip and then kind of squish that together. So now it doesn't come apart easily. See that? Okay. So now what we're going to do is add it in here. So I'm going to take some of my super glue that I have here. This is a brand new bottle, so it's going to be easy to apply the glue. Just put a couple of streaks of glue on there. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to literally just hold it down onto the whip. And while that's drying, I'm going to hit it with the string. And we're just going to tie it around really tight. Don't do it super tight the first time, otherwise you'll pop it loose. But about the second wrap, then you want to crank down on it. And only do it for a little bit, because one of the mistakes I made on a whip a long time ago, I think it was like the 3rd or 4th time I made a whip with an English eye, I would take the added strands and I would tie it like that much. Like 2 inches, I would just wrap it up with artificial sinew very tightly. And what that would do is make a kink in the whip. So just do like about 1/2 inch worth, and on a real whip that would be about good. So I'm going to take my snippers here, throw my string in the trash, and then torch it with my lighter. I need to refuel this thing. Alright, so there we go. And now the trick that you want to do with this is that you want to make sure that you inject these strands in the black, because if you're not careful you might add it in between these tan ones, and what you're literally going to do is break up the pattern. So we do not want that. So I'll show you what it looks like after I pass this and I'm ready to inject the strands in the actual plaiting. So we've plaited over the area where we've added the strands, and now what we're going to do is actually put this in our plaiting. So this is how I'm going to do it. What you don't want to do is something like this, and as you may notice, the pattern is broken. So we want to get the black inserted where the black strands need to go. So we're going to do that with the other one too. Just like that. See? And then you would just plait normally. So in this case, what we're going to have to do, so it is under 4/3 in this case, and then just plait like you normally would. So there you guys go. That's pretty much how you add strands and implement an English eye fall hitch. The only thing left to do now is to finish this whip, get it waxed, and that's pretty much it. So there you guys go, the chainsaw bullwhip is complete and it works very well, as you guys could tell from a few seconds ago. Now, this is not the only way to do an English high fall hitch. There are many ways to do it, but this is one method that I like to use, and you guys can tinker around with it as you guys see fit. But this whip is going out to Ms. Mac over in Georgia. If you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate it. And here's another little video that I have. I don't know which one it is, but there's one there. So be sure to subscribe and check out a video that I have going on. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.